The 12 Rules for Life in this book synopsis will teach you how to live a better life. The 12 Rules for Life book by Jordan B. Peterson contains these guidelines. Introduction. What does it mean to me? To help you navigate the rocky terrain of life, get some sound, practical counsel. In the Pinocchio story, a young puppet gets his wish granted. He frees himself from the strings that had been used to govern his existence and is given the chance to live a real, independent kid. However, Pinocchio was unaware that this also meant overcoming all of life's challenges and learning the difficult lessons that come from being honest, kind, and family-oriented. The effort of finding purpose in life is portrayed in all classic stories like Pinocchio as a balancing act between order and chaos, the familiar and the foreign, security and adventure, as well as many other well-known myths, fairy tales, and religious parables. Because we crave for universal principles and standards to give our life significance, people keep rereading and passing down historical texts as well as the writings of philosophers like Socrates and Aristotle. In creating a new list of 12 such principles to guide contemporary people through these turbulent times, author Jordan B. Peterson took these themes into account. What you'll learn from these summaries is: what young skateboarders can teach us about human nature, what lobsters can teach us about confidence, and what a lotus flower can teach us about seeking meaning in life. Rule 1: Good posture can help you stand out in a world where hierarchies are a prevalent feature of existence. The phrase "the pecking order" is undoubtedly one you've heard. But do you know how it started? It was coined by the Norwegian naturalist Torleif Skjelderup Eby, who was researching barnyard chickens in the 1920s when he observed that these birds had a distinct social structure. The strongest and healthiest were at the top, and whenever the chicken feed came, they got to peck first. The weakest birds at the bottom, with feathers coming off, were given simply the opportunity to peck at the remaining crumbs. These kinds of pecking orders exist naturally across the animal kingdom, not just among hens. For example, lobsters will fiercely compete for the greatest and safest hiding places, whether they are bred in the wild or in captivity. The winners and losers of these competitive conflicts will exhibit different chemical balances in their brains, according to scientists. Serotonin to octopamine ratios will be higher in winners than losers, and they will be skewed in the winner's favor. Even the posture of lobsters can be influenced by these levels. Winners tend to be more agile and upright, while losers tend to be tense and curled up. The upright lobsters will appear bigger and more intimidating, which will cause the tense ones to remain submissive. This difference will play a role in subsequent encounters. As you might have guessed, human societies exhibit comparable hierarchies and cycles of winning and losing. Studies have shown that people who are depressed or enslaved by alcoholism are less likely to engage in a competitive setting, which only encourages more inactivity, ongoing low self-esteem, and depression. Contrarily, those who are winning tend to exhibit a swaggering, self-assured body language, which can help them maintain their streak. Humans constantly compare themselves to one another, similar to lobsters, and we believe that a person's physical attractiveness indicates how intelligent they are. Therefore, if you want to give yourself an advantage, follow the first rule: hold your head high and adopt a winning posture. Rule 2: treat yourself with the same level of tenderness that you would a loved one. You wouldn't question the veterinarian and refuse to fill the prescription if he prescribed medication for your sick dog, would you? Why do we take better care of our pets than ourselves is a mystery, given that 1/3 of people disregard the medical prescriptions that doctors give them. We constantly recognize our flaws, which causes us to feel self-loathing. This can result in unnecessarily punishing ourselves and believing that we are unworthy of feeling good. We care for others more than ourselves as a result. The tale of Adam and Eve being banished from the Garden of Eden is at least as old as this notion that we are unworthy. In this parable, Adam and Eve stand in for all people, and an evil serpent deceives them into eating the forbidden apple of knowledge. Humans are thought to be permanently tainted with evil because they listen to the snake's advice. Even though the Garden of Eden story can reinforce the idea that we don't deserve good things and make us self-conscious about this dark side of ourselves, it can also be interpreted to mean that the entire world is corrupted rather than just us. You can think of the humans and the garden serpent as representing the natural order and chaos of the entire world. The two sides of the yin-yang symbol, which represents this duality of nature by having a light and a dark side but both of which contain a portion of the other and neither of which can exist without the other, serve as a representation of this duality in Eastern philosophy. Finding a healthy balance between light and dark in this situation is key to achieving harmony, so try to avoid going too far in either direction. For instance, if a parent tried to shield their child from exposure to anything bad, they would only be substituting the tyranny of excessive order for the chaos that was present. In other words, attempting to be flawlessly good is pointless. This brings up the second rule, which is to treat yourself with the same level of respect as a loved one. Therefore, take care of yourself and avoid fighting against chaos because it is an impossible battle to win. And instead of focusing solely on what makes you happy, try to think about what is best for you. Even though you might not have wanted to wear your mittens or brush your teeth as a child, these are important activities. You must choose your adult goals in order to define who you are and the course you want to take in life. The next step is to discover the actions and steps that are best for you. Rule 3: choose your friends carefully because the wrong ones can bring you down. In Fairview, Alberta, the author's northern Canadian hometown, one of his childhood friends never ventured beyond the prairies. He chose to stay, and as a result, he joined the other misfits in the community. The author would visit his friend from time to time after visiting his home, and with each visit, his friend's slow, sad decline became more obvious. Young potential was replaced by aging resentment. The author realized that those miscreants were demeaning his friend and preventing him from moving forward in life. The unfortunate thing is that anyone, anywhere could experience this. When an underperformer is assigned to a team of high achievers at work, a similar dynamic can emerge. The manager may believe that this will cause the problematic employee to emulate the positive behaviors of the others. However, research indicates that the opposite is more likely to occur, and that the bad habits will start to spread and lower everyone's performance. To ensure that you surround yourself with supportive friends, the kind of relationships that can result in positive change, is the third rule. Being selective about your friends is a wise decision and is neither selfish nor snobbish. Friendships that are supportive and uplifting go both ways. When you need a boost, they'll be there for you, and if your friend needs assistance getting over a setback or making progress, you'll be there for them. When used in a team setting, this dynamic can promote individual success and result in significant social achievements. When the author left Fairview for college, he joined a group of people who shared his interests. They supported one another in their academic endeavors and in a variety of other successes, including starting a newspaper and running a successful student union. When your friends don't put up with your moping around in negativity and instead want what's best for you, they'll prod you to snap out of it and get back on track, then you know you have good friends. Rule 4: instead of comparing yourself to others, focus on your own past successes in order to make progress. There used to be big fish in small ponds, for example. However, the idea of a small community is now a thing of the past, all thanks to the internet. In the modern world, where everyone is a part of a global community, there is always someone who is better than you. This introduces the subject of self-criticism. Now, it's crucial to be critical of oneself, otherwise, we wouldn't have anything to aim for, no incentive to improve ourselves, and our lives would quickly lose all purpose. Thankfully, it's in our nature to see the present as lacking and the future as holding much greater promise. This tendency has a purpose because it keeps us inspired to move forward and take action. But when we only focus on comparing ourselves to other people, self-criticism can turn ugly. We quickly lose track of our advancement when this occurs. The first problem is that it forces us to think in binary terms: either we succeeded or we failed. This makes it difficult for us to notice the gradual advancements, which are frequently modest but nonetheless significant. In addition to making us lose sight of the bigger picture, comparisons cause us to exaggerate one aspect of our lives. Let's say you review the previous year and discover that your productivity at work was lower than that of some of your colleagues. You might suddenly come to feel like a complete failure. But if you take a step back and examine every aspect of your life, you might find that your family life has significantly improved. The fourth rule is to never compare yourself to others and to always evaluate yourself in light of your past successes. You can keep moving forward by comparing your current results to previous ones. A warning sign that you need to improve your risk-taking and set more difficult goals for yourself is if you start to believe that you always succeed. Think of yourself as a home inspector when reviewing your progress. This entails categorizing each issue and examining the situation from top to bottom. Is the problem structural or cosmetic? Make a list of everything that needs to be improved before you can give your approval. With this meticulous approach, you might become so preoccupied with improving yourself that you lose interest in how you compare to others. Rule 5: it is the responsibility of parents to raise moral and obedient children. If you've ever witnessed parents ignore a child who is causing trouble, you might have questioned whether they are simply ineffective parents or whether they are being cunning by letting the child exhaust himself. The age-old nature versus nurture argument and divergent viewpoints regarding the types of instincts we are born with have contributed to changes in parenting strategies over time. A widespread notion that our prehistoric ancestors were kind, gentle, and childlike was promoted in the 18th century by the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. they claimed that the violent past we had was due to civilization's corrupting influence. Today, however, we have a better understanding of the reality that people do indeed have a natural tendency toward aggression and must learn how to tame it in order to develop into more civilized and kind adults. In contrast, most workplaces are a picture of tranquility. After all, you probably recall how vicious children on a playground can be. The fifth rule is that parents need to be more than just friends, they need to raise a responsible and likable person. The author believes that it is the responsibility of parents to ensure that their naturally aggressive child learns how to be a well-adjusted adult. Since nobody likes to be the bad guy, this can be difficult. However, kids are aggressive because it comes naturally to them to test boundaries and see where the boundaries of society are drawn. The lines that a parent draws must be clear-cut and firm. Despite the fact that it may not sound enjoyable, consider the fact that if they don't learn these lessons from a loving, understanding parent, they will undoubtedly learn them in a way that is less loving and understanding in the future. So let's examine the following 3 crucial parenting strategies. The first step is to restrict the laws. Kids who constantly encounter obstacles due to a lack of rules become frustrated. So keep things to a few straightforward, fundamental rules, like don't bite, kick, or hit anyone unless in self-defense. The second is to exert only the bare minimum of force. Only when consequences are made clear can discipline be used effectively and fairly. In order for a child to learn not to break the rule again, the punishment must also fit the crime, which means it should only be as severe as is required. Sometimes all it takes is a disgruntled expression, while other times it might take a week off from video games. The third will appear in pairs. A united front is crucial because children are cunning and will try to manipulate one parent against the other in order to get their way. Additionally, all parents make mistakes, but if you have a supportive partner, you'll be more likely to recognize and correct those errors. Rule 6. Although there are many injustices in the world, we shouldn't place the blame for them on other people. There is no purpose in sugarcoating the fact that there are many difficulties and sufferings in the world, yet this does not warrant giving up. But many individuals have believed that life is so unfair and terrible that dramatic measures are warranted throughout history. Leo Tolstoy, a Russian author, believed that life was so terribly unfair that there were only 4 possible responses: naivete, hedonism, suicide, or perseverance in the face of everything. In his article A Confession, Tolstoy considered these perspectives and came to the conclusion that suicide was the most honest course of action and that continuing to struggle was a proof of his weakness and inability to act appropriately. While some have reacted similarly, others have chosen to commit murder-suicides, such as the Sandy Hook or Columbine school shootings, in which they also choose to take the lives of others. In the 1,260 days leading up to June 2016, there had been 1,000 shootings in the US, in which someone has killed 4 or more people before frequently shooting themselves. Despite Tolstoy's pessimistic outlook, you shouldn't hold the world responsible for your suffering or how harsh and unfair you feel life to be. The 6th rule of life, which argues that you should be responsible for your own life before passing judgment on the rest of the world, is summarized as follows. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, another Russian author, had the view that it was possible to reject life's cruelty, even while it was being cruel to you. Despite his participation in the communist resistance to the Nazis during World War II, Solzhenitsyn was imprisoned by his own country after the conflict. In addition, while serving his term, he discovered he had cancer, making life in a Russian gulag even worse. Despite all, Solzhenitsyn didn't blame his fate on the outside world. He took it upon himself to use the time he had left to make a positive and significant contribution to the world. He embraced his role in supporting the Communist Party that had imprisoned him. He wrote the book The Gulag Archipelago, which offered a history of the Soviet labor camps he had personally witnessed as well as a stinging critique of them. The book was crucial in putting an end to any remaining support for Stalin's brand of communism in intellectual circles around the world. Rule 7. We should seek meaning over momentary pleasure since sacrifice can be a meaningful deed. Have you ever heard the tale of the monkey that accidentally caught his hand in the cookie jar? According to the legend, there was a cookie left inside of an open jar, and the jar's aperture was just large enough for the monkey's hand to get through, but not large enough for his fist to emerge with the goodie within. He would be in a fix if he persisted in attempting to hold on to his treat. The lesson here is that there is a cost to greed because the monkey ended up being captured for refusing to give up the cookie. How dissimilar is this to how people behave? How many people daily engage in activities that aren't beneficial for them? And how many people are unwilling to give up things that would be best for them? A life centered on momentary pleasures that will make it more bearable is one of the side effects of viewing the world as a pit of misery, as it makes it especially simple to rationalize such an existence. Additionally, it can't be all that horrible if it makes you happy, right? This is the rationale underlying self-harming behaviors such as binge eating and drinking, drug use, and sexual vice. The sacrifice that results in better things in the future by foregoing something now is the opposite side of this debate. This practice dates back to the prehistoric era, when communities would set aside food to get through the winter or to aid members of the group who were unable to hunt or cultivate. Another subject that appears frequently in the Bible is this one. It is made abundantly evident by God's expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise that their original sin is to blame for everyone's harsh and unkind lot in life. But in order to enjoy the pleasures of the hereafter, we must make the sacrifice of our suffering in this life. This takes us to rule number 7, choose long-term satisfaction over temporary pleasure. You may believe that this is a straightforward idea and that most people already practice it. After all, we give up our time now to go to work and put in long hours in order to travel later or unwind on a beach in the summer. There are both huge and small things we may give up for the greater good, and the bigger the sacrifice, the more satisfying it can be. But this goes deeper than giving up something for your own benefit. The image of the lotus blossom may be helpful. Starting out at the bottom of a lake, this plant slowly makes its way up until it breaks through the water's surface and blooms in the sunlight. To put it another way, if you persevere and are willing to make sacrifices to achieve your goals, you will be rewarded. Rule 8. Lies are a typical self-deception strategy, yet we should work toward living honestly. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, held that a person's ability to accept unadulterated truth was a good indicator of how strong their soul is. Even though in our culture telling the truth is frequently regarded as a desirable commodity, we nonetheless lie all the time. To get what we think we want, which is one of the key motivations for lying to ourselves and others. These are what we'll do and say to realize an ill-conceived objective, and the Austrian psychologist Alfred Adler referred to them as life lies. For instance, you might envision yourself retiring to a private beach in Mexico with an endless supply of margaritas. This kind of objective might be so alluring that you'll keep deluding yourself that it's feasible even as circumstances mount and make it seem increasingly unlikely. Continue to deceive yourself about this ideal plan despite the fact that it isn't actually a strategy at all because you haven't identified any specific actions that may possibly turn it into a reality. You might even acquire allergies to the sun, sand, and alcohol. These kinds of illusions frequently accompany our capacity to trick ourselves into believing we are knowledgeable about everything. Given that it stifles our innate urge to grow and learn, this viewpoint is extremely dumb. But when you live a falsehood and refuse to accept the reality, many worse and more horrible things can occur. In John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost, Lucifer is presented as a decent being who, nevertheless, grows arrogant and enamored with his abilities to the point where he and his followers are expelled from heaven for daring to question God's absolute truth. Rule number 8 is therefore established: stop lying and tell the truth. You don't have to abandon any of your lofty ambitions, but you need be adaptable in order to make your objectives attainable and true to reality. As a result, your objectives should evolve as your knowledge and perspective do. And if your life is off course, it could be time to question the truth you are currently holding, the one that makes you feel frail, rejected, or unworthy, and reassert your own truth in order to get back on course. Conversations are an opportunity to learn and develop, not to compete, according to Rule 9. The Greek philosopher Socrates is still regarded as one of the greatest people to have ever lived, even thousands of years after his passing. One of the causes of this is his conviction that the only thing he knew for sure was that he didn't know anything, which motivated both his chats and his eagerness to learn. Genuine discussion should involve a process that is analogous to thinking. Thinking is just listening to yourself when you consider two sides of a situation. So, in a sense, you're forming your own internal dialogue, which can be challenging because you have to fairly represent both viewpoints while still coming to an objective conclusion. One major purpose of interpersonal communication is to facilitate the presentation of opposing viewpoints and the formulation of conclusions. Even kids do this. If one kid thinks playing on a roof would be enjoyable, they might recommend it to a friend who then warns them about the risks. The subsequent discussion enables the young person who had the original idea to consider the alternative viewpoint, evaluate the likelihood that someone would fall and get wounded, and, ideally, come at the correct conclusion. However, this is not how conversations typically proceed. Instead, one or both of them will refuse to listen and approach the conversation like a contest they need to win to prove their prejudice is correct. As a result, they won't be listening to what the other person has to say but rather planning their next move or acting as though it's a contest of one-upmanship. The 9th rule is to assume you can learn something from others while listening to what they have to offer. One simple way to improve your conversational skills is to pay attention, then repeat back to yourself what the other person just said. This has several benefits, including ensuring that you have understood everything correctly and assisting with memory retention. It also lessens the possibility of changing or oversimplifying details to fit your point of view. When the truth is revealed, it can be unpleasant to accept it because it forces you to revise your assumptions and beliefs. However, this is the cost you pay for participating in the wonderful process of learning and development. Rule 10. Use exact words when addressing the complexity of life. We often only notice the solitary pieces we need to see in the vast and intricate tapestry that is life. You probably don't consider the branch, tree, roots, and soil that were all connected before the apple dropped if you're walking and see one on the ground. We often only notice or pay attention to things that are either helpful to us or go in the way of our goals, which is why the apple draws our attention since it stands for nourishment and food. The tree and the soil, however, are not taken into account because they are useless for meeting our needs. The world is just too complex for us to always be thinking about everything, so the mind makes things simpler and helps us move on with our lives. But occasionally, something can take place to demolish our perception of reality and make everything appear chaotic. This is why Rule 10 is so crucial: be exact in your wording. How does that assist? Consider the word vehicle, for example. You are aware of what an automobile is. It serves as a means of transportation from A to B, but do you really understand how an automobile operates when it breaks down midway between A and B? Can you open the hood and fix this complicated piece of equipment? It's likely that when your automobile breaks down, you have basic inclinations to swear at and even kick the car for no longer being such a simple thing. This is what occurs when things become complicated and chaotic, and the only way to recover is to restore order by outlining precisely what went wrong. When your body deteriorates and you get ill, the same thing must take place. You should describe the specific symptoms to your doctor because there could be a variety of issues present. Do you have a temperature or does your stomach hurt? Did it start right after you had a meal? It was what? You can put things back in order and start feeling better by being specific. Your connections may flow more easily if you use precise terminology. Does your partner engage in behavior that annoys you, such as not cleaning up after themselves? Life will be easier the sooner you are truthful and accurate with them. Rule 11. While some guys are bad and tyrannical, we must refrain from stifling human nature. The author of George Orwell's The Road to Wigan Pier concludes that socialism was gaining supporters in England not out of empathy for the difficult circumstances faced by miners but rather out of contempt for the wealthy and powerful. Similar opinions exist now concerning the patriarchy, a system of male-dominated leadership. Max Horkheimer of the Marxism-based Frankfurt School, a proponent of so-called critical theory, is one significant source of this loathing of patriarchy. Instead of attempting to empower women, he believed that education and intellectualism should concentrate on bringing about social change and try to undermine the strong oppressors in a culture, that is, the dominant males. Similar to this, the recommended political action in humanities classes now is the deconstruction of our macho society. According to the author, everything is about destroying rather than mending or creating, and this has left us with wrath toward masculine behavior, which can occasionally be overly harsh and narrow-minded. For instance, many male students frequently face aggressive charges that they support the patriarchy, yet, targeting all men as possible sex offenders is not the way to bring about righteous change. While it is true that many men have acted in a deplorable manner, the author makes the case that men have also made use of their inherently aggressive tendencies to engage in healthy competition, explore risky regions, and advance society. The author is reminded of skateboarders. Amazing skateboarders on the University of Toronto campus were displaying incredible bravery and a readiness to face danger outside of some of the buildings. Later, though, local officials made the decision to outlaw skateboarding on campus. Which leads us to rule number 11, stay out of the way of kids skateboarding. We cannot create laws that are in opposition to the essence of who we are as individuals. Our laws must undoubtedly keep us safe, but they must not do so by stifling people's positive traits. In fact, we've seen a very decent fictitious portrayal of what may occur when males lose their manhood. Aggression can then turn into a forbidden fruit that emerges as fascist tendencies, as the tale in Fight Club demonstrates. The contemporary rise of right-wing politics is another practical response to emasculation. The truth is that mothers don't want boys to grow up without the opportunity to become independent and learn things for themselves. Every boy has a mother, he claims, and what sort of mother would want to take care of a dependent man-child? Rule 12. Because life is difficult and laced with grief, it's crucial to appreciate the little victories. Have you ever had to take care of someone who was ill? It can be one of the more challenging obstacles in life. Since the age of 6, the author's daughter has struggled with severe arthritis. She has had ongoing discomfort, necessitating many injections and numerous joint replacement surgeries. You could feel that life is unjust if your daughter were in this circumstance, but it's crucial to understand that the dark periods of anguish, suffering, and sadness are what give the happy times their significance. Think about Superman. This character was extremely well liked when he first appeared. But after that, the creators of the comic books began bestowing powers upon him until he was essentially unbeatable. Naturally, readers began to find him to be extremely dull. Superman's victories are meaningless if there is no threat of harm. In the same way, if we didn't have to overcome obstacles and pain to get at happy moments, they wouldn't mean anything. This is why it's crucial to abide by Rule 12, make the most of even the tiniest pleasures life has to offer. You can live life to the fullest and enjoy everything wonderful that comes your way by adhering to this rule. Additionally, even if the difficult periods last a long time, you'll be able to get through them. After suffering from agony and discomfort for years, the author's daughter eventually discovered a new physiotherapist who was able to assist her regain some degree of normalcy, movement, and pain relief. They're both content to take advantage of the advancements for as long they last, even though there might be additional difficulties in the future. The greatest mentality to adopt is one that encourages you to take your time to stop and pet a cat when you come across one on the sidewalk. Keep in mind that just as there is no order without chaos, there is no day without the darkness of the night. Life is filled with hardship, but it also gives purpose to our tenacity and makes the peaceful moments so wonderful. Final thoughts. The main idea of this work is: life is a perpetual struggle filled with hardships and tribulations, and if there is one thing you can count on, it's that there will probably be more difficulties waiting for you. Nevertheless, despite how brief these times may be, there is also beauty and delight to be found. You can only do your best, act honestly and truthfully, and refrain from being conceited and self-centered. It's crucial to accept responsibility for your situation in life and to stop blaming the outside world or other people for your flaws. In the end, only you have the power to make changes in your life. By clicking the link in the description box, you can purchase a copy of the book on Amazon if you found this summary to be helpful and are curious to learn more. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe to help grow the channel.